Hello and
All
welcome to
right.
Mostly Minnesota Music Podcast Edition. I'm Ann Tracy. I'm here with my co-host,
Heather Baker.
yeah, and we are here to talk and talk to Seth Duin. Welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited. You do so many things, and I kind of have to start the boat off here saying thank you for the Shania Twain tribute show last weekend, and the proceeds going to Women's March Minnesota.
Absolutely. That was a wonderful night. We had a good time.
Yeah, and so fantastic. And maybe we'll just start a little bit. I mean, that's how I know you is through you organized the original Shania Twain tribute show and then the Dolly show. And how did you get involved in some of that? How did you think of it?
So it actually kind of started with a group of musicians and I who play. We would do some occasional cover shows. It kind of back in 2014, I think, at the old Viking bar. I was doing Wednesday nights there, and it was just kind of it started as just kind of, I took over for Nate Case, who used to live in town and has since moved to Germany to become a music therapist. And he had those Wednesdays booked, and I kind of took over for him, just gathering different musicians each week. And I would send out a list of covers it was just kind of a fun way to kind of make a couple bucks and have a couple beers with some friends and play some music on a stage and invite some people out. And when you're a musician, all your friends are musicians. And so everyone that kind of showed up, then it'd be like, oh, you want to come on up and sing this one? Or do you want to come play bass on this one or play keys on that? And so we kind of started just gathering on Wednesdays there, and eventually kind of settled into a lineup that we called A Little Too Short to Be Stormtroopers. Just, we needed a name for it, and that was kind of a joke, which is the way that most bands get names, is just kind of a random joke or something. And so we were doing that on Wednesday nights, and just kind of like learning sets of covers, and then started getting asked to do events and block parties and weddings or whatever. And as a musician, it's kind of always good to have like kind of a back pocket cover band, like kind of in case you get asked to do a party or a private event or a wedding. And so that's kind of what that group has become. I think there's been about 30 different musicians that have played in the group, and it's just kind of a moment where you always say yes to the gig, and then you build the band around whoever can be there. So that group had been playing for a bit, and we got hired by a singer named Savannah Cole, who was one of the Miss Minnesota. I'm not sure the pageant, but that was kind of like her talent, was she was a country singer. And we got hired to be her backing band for a gig out in North Dakota at some festival out there. And in the set, there was like 10 Shania Twain songs. And so as we're all learning these songs, we were just kind of like, oh my gosh, these songs are like, I saw the name and I thought I didn't know it, but it's deeply ingrained in my brain from being a child in the early 2000s. Like, these songs were always on the radio. And so, and then like, it's completely different when you're listening to a song to learn it, you start really focusing in. And so for me specifically, like really focusing on certain guitar parts. And I was like, oh my God, these are really, really well-produced songs, well-written songs. They're catchy. I already like know the hook in my brain, but man, these, like, whoever recorded on these was insane. And so it was really fun to learn those songs. And then we just had the one gig, and we were like, I kind of want to do these songs again. And so we called up First Avenue, and we were like, would you guys entertain the idea about a Shania Twain show? And we lined up to do the first one in 2019, kind of like right around Shania's birthday time. And at the time we were like, well, for these tribute shows, I mean, we are all more, most of musicians are a little more excited to play your own music. And but when we decided to kind of make this jump to doing like the tribute show, we were like, I think it feels a little better if you can kind of partner with like a local nonprofit or an organization, something to have it be more than just a tribute show, to have it kind of raise awareness or raise funds, especially for people who might not even be familiar with the musicians on the stage, and they might be just familiar with Shania Twain. They might walk through the door and then learn something, in last week's case, about Women's March and what they're doing in the state. And so between the Shania shows and the Dolly show, which we're hoping to do another Dolly show, crossing our fingers that live music is still happening in the winter. But yeah, between those, we've been able to support Women's March, Planned Parenthood, and Women Winning. And we kind of try and keep it based on organizations that are empowering the LGBTQ community and women's rights and voters' rights. And so those are kind of the main beats that we've been trying to raise up, and about being a positive ally, because we also recognized that, you know, a lot of we were a band that when the band started, it was just a band of white men, and a lot of things happening currently where we want to be better allies or work on ourselves as well. So
well, and one of the key words from the start of that story to the end is that the idea of collaboration and getting a lot of different people in the room. Because I remember talking to folks after the Dolly show, and I think of Katie Vernon especially, and she was like, that was great. This is a group I never would have played with, all these women. And I didn't realize that Savannah Smith and Faith Bobbitt didn't really know each other well until the first Shania Twain show.
yeah, so
I
that's been
assumed
kind
they'd
of
gone to kindergarten together. I mean,
I know, yeah. So that's been kind of another fun part, is when we first started kind of choosing the casts for these. It starts with, you know, who all of us who play in other bands will kind of put our heads together and think about, oh, who are some singers that we know that might be willing to do this, or that we've played with on other bills with our other bands, and then kind of building around that. And then getting other recommendations from other people like yourself. Ann and I actually grabbed coffee one day before the Dolly show to talk about some possible singers, and that's how I met like Jenna Enemy through you, and some folks like that. And so, but it's been fun to kind of see how those like friendships or other musical collaborations kind of get forged through just kind of putting a random group of people together. And like, yes, the backing band all knows each other, but then we don't really think about it, but not all of the singers know each other or know the band. And so it's kind of, it could go either way, you know. The music industry is kind of fickle like that, where, you know, egos come into play sometimes, and it could have gone very poorly, but thankfully everyone seemed to just really embrace the positivity of the whole experience, and with little to no rehearsing, and just kind of had a good time with it. And they've all ended up being really positive and wonderful evenings. So
I was going to ask, I went to both the Shania Twain tributes, and from the first year to the second year, you had a few of the same artists. And from my memory of their first time to this year's, there was some big growth happening. I'm wondering if you're like a proud uncle going, I kind of had a little part in that, or whatever, just the whole, because it is such a great atmosphere that you guys bring and comfort level, and then to see that blossom with each artist on stage, I guess, too.
yeah, I think that there is a level of kind of, there's a new level of confidence, I think, especially since the first Shania show was the first time we did that. And for a lot of the singers, it was their first time meeting the bandmates, or the backing band. And like I said, little to no rehearsing. And so I think after that first one, there was a little more trust in, oh yeah, the band has got it. everyone's on top of their parts, because it takes a lot of faith for a singer to just kind of like jump in and trust a band of musicians that they may have only played with one or two of them before and not the whole group. Or like I said, if you don't really get much of a rehearsal other than checking your song at sound check. And so I think there was a new level of confidence, and that there was a little more expectations that were set from that first one, where at that time not a lot of people really knew what to expect, and we didn't even know how tickets were selling for that first one, just simply because we didn't really know how many people. We were all into Shania Twain, but we didn't know if everybody else was going to be.
But I do think the charisma and the talent that you guys bring, and just, you're always a good time. When you said you play weddings and stuff, it's like, I kind of want to have somebody renew their vows or something, because I kind of want to have the Stormtrooper band play somewhere there. So it's just, it's the energy too that you bring that is, yeah.
Yeah, we like to keep it light and fun, and I don't know, all of us kind of come from a similar place of we never really wanted to get into that rut of only doing tribute shows or something, and so we figure it's more fun if you kind of keep it lighthearted and goofy and not take yourself too seriously. Hence the weird, goofy name of the band as well.
Which is good, but it does make I should have started. Except as I said, I just love the collaborative nature of it, and we're just off the cusp of it, and it was such a fun night. It was so amazing. But now we should pivot a little bit and talk about General Be the Wiz.
Oh yeah. So that's a band that's kind of, I would consider General Be the Wiz to be kind of my main band, or what I at least cut my teeth with. We all met. It started the singer and I back in when we were students at Luther College down in Decorah, Iowa, and we were roommates our second year there, and so we're only like 19 years old at the time, and which is a really goofy time in anyone's life. And we, just kind of like playing guitar. I had played guitar for a while, and I was looking for a band kind of actively at that time, and I was a music major. And so like kind of, when you play music at a college then and decide to study music, you start to slowly meet other like-minded folks who are also studying music. But I met Quincy, and who wasn't studying music. He was a wrestler, and completely different scene from anything I was used to. But I also found out that he sang and played some acoustic guitar, and so we entered just like on a whim on an open mic night at the school just for like their homecoming week or something, and we were doing some Tenacious D covers, just kind of like jokey stuff. And that's why the name General Be the Wiz is so goofy, is because it started out, we needed a goofy name to kind of go with that joke music, and we did a couple of like originals too, just these two acoustic guitars, and we won that open mic night, and we're like, oh, let's keep playing. And then eventually we were starting to get tired of the joke stuff, and so we found another buddy of ours to play drums. That's when we met Kai Brewster, and he was the original bass player of that band, and we started writing our own songs, and we put out a record in 2000. Our first record that we put out was in 2011, and we recorded the whole thing in my parents' basement on with a very limited budget. And it's the recordings are still out there somewhere, but you can definitely hear 10 years of growth in our music now compared to in 2011. But some of those songs from that first record will still play live, and the band has shifted over the years. We added a new guy on bass, and then had Kai on second guitar. So now Kevin Kokenauer is our bass player there. And we had a drummer shift in 2014 after our original drummer moved to Portland. And so that band is kind of, the sound therefore evolves when a band evolves like that. But what I like about that band is it's always been, I play in a lot of bands where it's, there's like one songwriter, and the rest of the musicians, like myself in many of the bands I play in, are you're playing their songs, you're adding your own flavor to their songs. But with General Be the Wiz, it's always been this core group of individuals, and we write all the songs collaboratively. someone will come to a rehearsal with an idea or a riff or a hook or something, or in our singer's case, some lyrics. And then we will put these songs together as a group. And I realized very quickly that that's even after studying music composition in college, it's still my favorite way to write music, is with a group of people who kind of, you're just as good of friends as you are musical collaborators. And so that group still holds a very special place in my heart. And we didn't get to play a lot over the pandemic just because we just health concerns didn't want to be in the same room as other people. But now are finally getting back into rehearsing mode, and we were able to do 2 or 3 shows this summer, and we got some stuff planned for this fall, which is gonna be good. And we were sitting on about 7, 8 songs that we wanted to record right before the pandemic, and then couldn't record them. So I think that's the plan this fall, is to kind of get that band back into high gear, which will be fun.
Nice, that's good. I feel like you played some festivals over the summer, or outdoors, anyways.
Yeah, General Be The Wiz we did Nurse Fest, which is kind of an annual, or I think it's been going on for about 10 years now. No, 9 years. I think next year is going to be their 10th year, they said. But that was over in that block kind of by Inbound Brewing in the North Loop. That was a blast. We love that festival. We did Rivertown Days down in Hastings, and we were going to do Fulton's Grand Fondo, and that got kind of canceled and rescheduled again. And so we might do that next year, but we're starting to book up some stuff for the fall again, hopefully, if things kind of keep going. Another funny story with General Be The Wiz, though, is, we recorded this album Skeleton that we put out in 2017. And that was kind of the first time that we decided to take the whole studio route of going into a studio with like 8 to 10 songs, but going in with an open mind and viewing your producer as kind of a collaborator. And so we worked with Joe Mabbitt, who has for years owned that studio, The Hideaway, in Northeast Minneapolis here. And he collaborates a lot with like Laserbeak and the Doomtree crew. And we thought that it'd be kind of fun to have someone with more of like a hip hop background producing our rock and roll music. And that ended up being really fun. He had some really cool ideas. But so we spent like 3.5 years working on that album, and then put it out. And then Spotify 2 years later, in 2000, it was like right around the time of that first Shania show, Spotify took it down, claiming that we had streaming fraud. And we were like, are you kidding me? We're like this tiny band from the Midwest. Yes, like we tour around and we have like a decent amount of fans, but a band of our size kind of needs those Spotify numbers to like have legitimacy in the scene. And they were like, nope, you must have hired robots because this is a fishy amount of streams. And they took it down and we couldn't get back out. So we're thinking about re-releasing that on Spotify. It's still on other plenty of other streaming places, but we're thinking about re-releasing on Spotify and maybe doing a Rage Against the Stream show where we try and like raise some awareness to some of these organizations that are working to get more money for artists from streaming services like Apple Music and Spotify and Amazon, where you're only making like a cent a stream, not even a half a cent sometimes. So well, and to get blacklisted like that, or to get pulled like that, you're kind of getting into my day job, because I've had to deal with people who've been kind of blacklisted from Google listing. It's hard to prove that. Like, what do you say? Our moms are big fans. They might be. Yeah, they said they were like, well, can you send us like your promo strategy that you used for the album, or who you paid for promotion? And we were like, honestly, we sent it to our email list, which had maybe 900 people on it. And then we posted it to Facebook and like did the Facebook promotion for like $25 so that it lived a little longer. And then we told our friends and they were like, that's not good enough. So who knows?
That is crazy, but I love the Rage Against the Stream. I think that's genius. But I just think you're good. You're good. I love that the sound kind of morphs, each album too. The one, None of Your Concern and Screw. Every time I was listening to it, it sounded like Axl Rose meets Sisters, or Scissor Sister kind of more. I was like, I like this. It has a playful and just kind of, I don't know. It was so cool. I'm like, yes, I can see why you get crazy amounts of streams.
Oh, that's a new comparison. I haven't heard that one, so that's fun.
Can you hear that? I
can
do.
hear that though. Yeah, I'll have to tell our singer that he got an Axl Rose comparison. That's gonna boost his brain. That's great.
But yeah, I was just it's I don't know. And then another one I heard, like Alabama Shakes a little bit. Like it's you kind of go all these places where it is. I feel like you would get a bunch of streams from a whole different audience too. You're like,
well, thank you for saying that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those. That's another thing that I've always loved about General Be The Wiz. Is it's not necessarily been a band that has ever had a specific formula. Or a lot of bands that I play with, you'll work on a song and you'll maybe tweak some things because you think it might be better for radio or for a specific type of listener. Whereas that band has always just been about writing what we think is fun, and which is oftentimes a reflection of your own musical tastes and what you're into at the time. Which, when you're a band for 10 years and your musical tastes kind of ebb and flow and grow, and everyone kind of influences each other, and everyone learns new things on their own instruments, or takes on different instruments and different influences, and we've kind of always let that seep into the writing of that band. And so there's not really one song that's necessarily very similar to the next song. Some of those records are a little bit all over the place, but that's kind of what we tried to do on that 2017 record, Skeleton. We tried to kind of get a little bit of cohesion into our sound to have that sound like a full record, but still the influences are kind of all over the place, but we have a fun time with it. And I think that's kind of what can help that band attract different types of listeners as well.
Definitely.
Absolutely. And it'll be fun to get a chance to see it this fall. Really,
yeah. I think we're playing the Borough Block Party in the North Loop in the end of September.
Okay, we'll get the date on that. That's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, to kind of sit on that and let it be during the pandemic, I'm pivoting again because a lot of people might just rest on their laurels, but you did not. You came up with a genius idea of the pet songs.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a genius idea, but it was definitely an idea. Yeah, that was kind of a goofy. That was in the early days of the pandemic when everyone was kind of there was a lot of panic in the air and a lot of anxiety, and no one really quite knew what was gonna happen. And quite frankly, it was also kind of a goofy time in the pandemic because everyone at the time was taking it fairly seriously and staying home, and everyone was like, oh, I guess we're going to be locked in for 3 weeks. Which was man, I wish I was not that naive at the time. But
I think we all thought it was going to be like a snowstorm.
Yeah, kind of like just one and done, and here we are.
Make sure
in
we
the
got beer.
5th, 6th wave, yeah. But yeah, it was one of those things where I was like, oh great, I had pretty much gigs all the time, and they were all canceled. And I remember I think the last gig that I played before the pandemic was like that March 12th or 13th 2020.
So right.
Yeah, I was at Mortimer's playing with Zach Baker is his name in town here, and we went to that show, and I remember calling Zach up and being like, is this show still on? I'm watching the news right now, and it's like, feels like COVID is here in Minnesota, like in St. Paul, in Minneapolis, like, is this still happening? And Zach's like, yeah, I think the show's still on. And I get there, and I was talking to the bartender at Mortimer's, and it was like, oh yeah, we're not going to shut down. We're not going to close down. What is this? Like, they're not going to make us close. And then sure enough, like 2 days later, every place in town is like, we're closed till further notice. And so, yeah, it was it was like almost a panic. And all the musicians in the town at the time were like, I'm going to do a streaming gig here. I'm gonna go live on Instagram tonight, or I'm gonna go live on Facebook and play my songs. And that was like, it was kind of exciting. And I was like, okay. So I posted on my own Instagram story. I was like, what if you follow me, you know, like what would you be interested in seeing? Like, would you be interested in just rearrangements of solos, or like just like weird ambient stuff, or maybe like guitar soundtracks to your favorite movies, or re-soundtracking a movie with a guitar or something. And then one person or a couple of friends of mine were like, you should do the pet songs again. And this was the thing that when I was living in Montreal a couple of years ago, it was like just a really depressing, dark time of winter. And sometimes to like give myself a quick pick me up, I would just like look at Pet Finder and look at goofy looking dogs and stuff. And at the time, I had found a new kind of a vocoder setting in my computer's audio workstation that I had not like played with much, and I'd like just started playing with it then. And then I was like, I'm just gonna kind of like, I made like one or two jingles for like just some goofy looking animals, and I posted them on my Twitter, and like animal lovers got a hold of them and were like retweeting them and everything, and we're like, oh, do one for my dog, oh, do one for my dog. And so I did them for like a day, and it was just kind of a self-preservation thing. And then so yeah, fast forward to that March of the pandemic, then someone was like, oh, you should do that again. And I was like, okay, so I got to make some money off of this. If people like what you're doing, don't do it for free all the time. And so I was like, if you Venmo me starting at $5, I'll do it, and send me a picture of your pet. I'll make them a personalized jingle, and then I will also donate $1 of that to Open Arms Minnesota, which is they have Kevin, the bass player for Be The Wiz, works there, and he's a chef, or he cooks with a lot of volunteers there, and kind of designs some of the recipes for getting food into the community. And they do a lot of good work, and they were, I think, needing the attention at that time because they were getting really busy. And so that was a good way to kind of lift up Open Arms, but also to make a couple bucks on my end. And I joke with people because it's like, and then because then Care 11 did a story on it, and then City Pages ran a thing on it, and then I was on the Kelly Clarkson show for it, and I was like, wow, this is just like so like very emblematic of how fickle the music industry is, you know, you can work really hard at playing in as many bands or writing as many songs or playing your instrument and touring for 10 years, and then all of a sudden the most traction you get is for writing dog jingles. it was just kind of a funny thing,
but an astute observation.
But yeah, I really enjoyed it though. It was really fun. It brought a lot of people some levity and some joy in a time that was really stressful. I was really stressed at the time, and it kind of helped take my brain off of everything because I was just looking at animals and singing goofy songs to them.
Did you make one for your dog George Harrison too?
I did. I unfortunately did not. Yeah. Well,
there's always time then, I guess.
Yeah.
How many do you think you did?
I did around 300 of them. And it reached, there were still some that lingered that I didn't get a chance to do, where I just told them, I'm just going to make this a donation. I hope that's okay with you. Because once the world started slowly coming back last summer, and, you know, with all of I became a little more involved with a lot of the protesting and community support that was happening around the George Floyd uprising last summer. My time felt a little more needed, and I was like, I can't quite in good conscience focus on singing to dogs on a screen when I need to be out with my community right now. So.
And you do a lot. I'm just going to you do so many interesting things that I forget about clever transitions. I'm just going to go and say, you do a lot of things. You do video work, and I know you do a lot of video, it seems, with nonprofits.
Yeah. So when I was while I was in Montreal, when I moved there with my partner, I was kind of like, well, so here we go, going to be musician full time because I don't speak French, so I can't really get a job. So and as a musician, you rely purely on your entire network. And so moving to a place where you don't really have any network was kind of new to me, because at least when I moved to the Twin Cities, I kind of knew a handful of musicians already. I knew most of my friends were in the city's area, and I was able to meet musicians that way. But not knowing the language and not knowing the scene at all was kind of a fun challenge to jump into. But once I started kind of meeting players and playing with some bands in Montreal, there was one singer named Chris James who he was previously signed to Sony Records, and then he decided to pursue acting, and then kind of had this resurgence where he wanted to get back into music and was hiring a band. And so I got hired to play with him. And while playing with him, I found out that he also owned a wedding production company. And it was like, oh, well, he was like, video work, you can make your own hours. You can, if you need to be on tour on the road, you can just take your footage with you and edit. And as long as you have, a internet connection, I was like, that seems like a great idea. Cause I had at the time, I had some basic experience with videography. And so I did a lot of shadowing with him, learning about new equipment, learning software, learning style choices and color grading, and I kind of shadowed a couple of weddings with him and enjoyed that. Hung out at his studio a lot and was like, I could do this. And so kind of started investing into some video equipment. And then and now that is kind of most of my clients that I do work with on the video end are all nonprofits. Because we have a great nonprofit scene here in the Twin Cities. So, but yeah, and on top of that, and then I'm, moving back to the Twin Cities, I've actually met quite a few musicians who are also videographers. So we work in tandem, and the two go hand in hand a lot really well too. If you, as a musician, you can make your own background music for videos if you ever need. A lot of us share studios and share equipment, share spaces, and share projects. And like, I don't know if you know Richard Medek, he's a drummer.
Yep.
He got into video work over the pandemic, and we're talking
I've seen
about
some of his stuff. Yeah.
and then also then as musicians, then he is doing some cool stuff now too, just like doing music videos for other people in his studio. And then Frank Merklowitz, the keyboard player at Shania Night, and he's also in general Be The Wiz. He has been doing video work for the Minnesota Orchestra for about 5 years. So all the videos you see from them, he's putting together. And so there's a large amount of us in the music scene that are actually also videographers or video editors, just because some of the skills that are needed for each really blend together quite well.
I think that attention to detail with flexibility, if it fits artistically, you don't have to finish out a sentence necessarily, but it's got to be smooth and appear, I could see where those would fit.
Yeah. And then like, just on a pure like logistical level, I remember when I had a day job, and it was like there were a lot of gigs that I would have to turn down because I couldn't make a daytime rehearsal or something. And so just being able to be flexible, because I wish it were easier to make full-time money being a musician, but the reality is I would say pretty much every musician that I know has some sort of side gig to just kind of help pay the bills. And so this one is a really, really good one for me anyway, where I don't have to turn down gigs because I can take a 1 p.m. rehearsal or a 9 a.m. rehearsal on a weekday. I don't have to worry about a boss telling me that I can't go there or something.
But then it lets you work with the nonprofits, and I think that that's an important aspect to you as well.
Oh, for sure. I really kind of have that. I worked at College Possible for a few years when I had just graduated college, and that kind of really instilled in me this idea that I want to always be working with someone or some sort of mission or mission-centric organization that's because there's a lot of problems in the world, and when you do work for any nonprofit, you get exposed to a lot more of the problems that there are in your own community, and you want to feel like you're doing something about it. And so that's why I think it's so fun for some of these cover shows to also have that nonprofit connection.
Well, I will tell you, we had so many people come up to us afterwards and thank us for our work with the Women's March and to ask more about it. And
good.
Yeah. So which energized us.
Cool. Yeah, I think that it's fun I think that having those kind of partnerships, we just have such a unique opportunity right now in the Twin Cities music scene, to make some more changes. There was a lot that happened over the pandemic, with the uprising last summer, but also with the Me Too movement, and working for a more inclusive scene that's better for everyone and more accepting for everyone, where we just don't want to have, personally, I don't want to make the time for any more negativity or any behaviors that where you see it or you hear it, we're going to be calling that out now. And I think that a part of changing that kind of toxicity in the scene starts with partnering with good organizations that are raising awareness to some of this stuff in the first place. So,
well, and I can't stress enough the importance of having male allies. You know, some people who might not listen to me will listen to you.
Great.
I think I always think back when marriage was open to everybody, and a friend of mine sort of said, "Thank you for your alliance, because without you, this would never have passed." And I said, well, I'm glad, because it should. But I thought, yeah, of course, yeah, you have to, it's people inside and outside the movement have to work together to make change.
Mm-hmm. And especially, I mean, like I said, I don't mean to ever be the one that's like, as a white man, but as a white man, and more of us need to recognize the power that we do have. And I think too often, especially just the way that rock and roll has evolved since its inception, has always been white men in power, but also white men writing the songs about, oh, woe is me and all of my problems. And I'm just ready for a bit of change from that. So
yeah. One of the funny things we did is we interviewed almost all of the artists off the Me Too Minneapolis album, and it was really interesting to hear their perspective. But yeah, the days of she was just 17 as a songer. Well, if she's just 17, back off. I mean,
that ain't right.
that ain't right. Exactly. Yeah. Unless you're 17 yourself, that ain't right. Yeah. I mean, it's just, and just the recognition of that and the calling out of it, and it's much easier to call out.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
So and that's kind of one of the another reason why that whole Shania and Dolly shows started too, is it's kind of felt like a way that we could at least try and contribute to being better allies, or like I said earlier, working on ourselves to recognize more ways to be better allies in the community.
Oh, thank you for doing that. I've got one last thing to pivot to, and I didn't know that you did this before. And then we got it. Moved by Music.
Oh, oh man, yeah, that was a while ago. So there's a church that I had, that I do a church gig with regularly. I mean, again, as musicians, most of us have some sort of church gig on Sunday mornings. And we all, it's funny because a lot of the church gigs that I do play, it's like there's a community where you might not know a single person at that church, but you know every musician that's played at that church, and we all kind of share these gigs with each other. And if we need a sub, because it's one of those gigs where someone needs to be there every Sunday, so we're always looking for different subs. And so the one that I've held for, I think, since I started there in 2015 is a Lutheran church down in Hastings, Minnesota called Our Saviors. And I've been playing guitar there, and I've gotten to meet some fantastic musicians through that band. It started with a keyboard player named John Koziel, who has been kind of in the jazz scene for a really long time. He since moved on, and now that band is directed by Jason Kraft. Do you know him?
I don't know if I do.
You might recognize him. He's I think he's maybe the best Hammond organ player in the state of Minnesota.
Oh.
He is just wickedly talented. He
Okay.
played with Willie Murphy for a while. He's Moses. Yeah, he plays. He doesn't play out quite as much as he did, but he lives out in Afton, Minnesota now, and he is. Yeah, I just have the utmost respect for him as both a musician and a band leader, and he's kind of one of the things that does keep me wanting to play there every Sunday. But yeah, last summer, again with everybody pivoting, that church decided to do online services, and so that turned into then as being in that band doing recording sessions once a week, and part of that was also doing they did a series called Move by Music where they would have different either people from the congregation or musicians that play at the congregation pick a song to sing and talk about it. And the one that I did was actually one called Mercy by Ben Kyle, who is the singer for Romantica. And so I did a cover of his song Mercy for that. And that was kind of fun just because this kind of a fun story with that is, do you know Ben Lubeck? He's the singer for Farewell Milwaukee.
Yeah.
So I was playing in his solo band I played with his band for his solo music. That's just Ben Lubeck. And we did his release show at the Parkway Theater, and the opening act that night was Ben Kyle doing his solo songs. A lot of Bens here.
A lot of Bens.
So Ben Kyle, the singer of Romantica, and he was doing some of his solo stuff opening the show, and it was a beautiful set, and I loved it. And then we played our set, but then the next morning was a Sunday morning, so I went down for that church gig, and I'm not always with church gigs. It's a lot of downloading the music right before you get in the car and then listening to it on the way down, and then just kind of plugging and playing and making sure you not a lot of rehearsing really all the time. But that particular band was in a rehearsal running the songs right before the service, and I opened up my music and I was like, wait, Ben Kyle? I literally played a show with him last night. And so this music that got programmed. And so that was my first introduction to that song. And then I think you guys probably know Andy Holmas, right?
I don't
I know
if
the
I
name.
You might recognize him, but he's at many shows that I'm sure you end up at as well. But he also he's a big fan of Ben Kyle's music as well, and he talked to me a lot about that song, and he sent me some videos of Ben and his band kind of like recording kind of acoustic demos of that song a while back, and it was just kind of wild to see all this kind of come together all at once, being like, whoa, I may have heard this song last night, actually, now that I think about it, but here we are playing it. So yeah, I chose to do that song. It was kind of a cool moment in the pandemic again, where it's a song that offered a little bit of light and hope in very dark times, which I think we're still seeking a lot of right now.
Mm-hmm.
So,
oh, it's good. It is a fun. Yeah, I said it's a fun moment in time, in a weird moment of time.
yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What? Well, there we go. This has been so much fun to talk to you, to learn so much about you. I'm looking forward to hearing more about shows that are coming up. And
Yeah.
I got my hopes up for the Dolly tribute.
Oh yeah, we're gonna start kind of trying to plan that one in the coming months here, and
Nice.
hopefully get a date soon for that. Like I said, fingers crossed that we keep playing music and everyone stays healthy, and that we emerge into the new scene like beautiful butterflies. Yes.
That the next time we're together in the same room.
Yes.
Let that be the case.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you. Thanks
for
Seth.
chatting,
Thanks
you
for
guys.
talking
It's
to us.
wonderful to get to know you guys a little more too. And yeah, we'll see you at the next one, I suppose.
Sounds good.
Definitely.